Hi everybody and welcome to Cohesion Step 2, and our online classroom today has been recorded because I'm actually on holiday. No, I haven't gone anywhere. I'm actually holidaying at home. But if you watched the classroom and looked at Cohesion Step 1, you would have heard me use the word signal, and this video is all about what parts of our writing signal ideas to the reader. So how writing becomes coherent, unified. For you, this video should help you decide, do you know the areas of writing that you're good at? Do you know the areas of writing you need to improve? And do you know the areas of writing you need to learn? Practice, practice, practice is our mantra. So let's begin. I'm going to show you a few ladders with ideas in that are our cohesive devices, and I'm sure you'll know most of them. But we need to begin with, which word do we need to use where in the sentence? And we're going to be thinking about the first step of the planning stage when we're thinking about the words we use, which might be so, because, finally, next, worst, hardest, most fearful, patiently, nervously, generously, silently, happily, formidable, comical, silhouette, unfortunately, echoing, communication, aggressively, reclusive. So the first part, right at the planning stage, is where you need to think about your vocabulary. And when you write your plan, it's important to have a handful of words that you actually want to add in that you've thought about previously and you know what they mean and you know how you can use them. Vocabulary, very important. Secondly, at the writing sentences stage, you need to be thinking about your connectives. Connectives, very important cohesive device. We talk a lot about starting at entry 3 with the connective and we talk about the use of compound sentences where you're using for and nor, but, or, yet, so. And remember that there are 2 or 3 that we use a lot in English writing. You don't have to use them all. You might look at thinking about using but, so, because, when, although, while, whereas, however, eventually, gradually, nevertheless, despite, therefore, alternatively, similarly, and there are other connectives that you can use. But the important thing about the ladder is that if you look at the sides of the ladder, you can see that the arrows are pointing both ways. This means that this is not a linear way of working. You need to choose from 2 or 3 areas of that ladder. Remember, even if you're working at functional skills level 2, you do have to demonstrate that you can vary your sentences, and there is a video about varying sentences if you want to look at that for revision. Vary your sentences by looking at not just 1 or 2 sentences with a simpler connective, but sentences that are going to signal to your reader whether you are adding ideas or contrasting ideas. Also, at the second stage, you need to think about the punctuation that you use. And when you start at entry 3, you will probably be using the full stop, the exclamation mark, and the question mark. And if you've worked really hard, you might already understand the use of that comma. By the time that you reach level 2 with your functional skills, we want to be thinking that you understand what ellipsis is and how to use that. So ask me in class if you're not sure, and we will go over that point. It's also really important that you understand that the semicolon and the colon are really important parts of punctuation, and they will signal to your examiner that at level 2 you really understand how to show links between your ideas. So thirdly, going back to the ladder, sometimes we think that when we write an exam, we just have to prepare for that exam. That's not true. It's like life. You're preparing all the time. So the third part of the use of the ladders today is to suggest to you to collect examples from text that you read. So practice reading sentences aloud or listening to language patterns, and find out what sentences have used after or when. Would you use those? Would you use although, before, afterwards, eventually, sometimes? And what type of text did you find that in? Was it a newspaper? Was it a novel? Was it a diary extract or a leaflet? After a while, even though, meanwhile. So these are words that you will also see sometimes starting at the beginning of your sentence. That's going to signal to the reader an idea that you have. So if you say having decided, the reader knows that what comes next is important information that helps them solve a puzzle that you might have been thinking about. Actually, even then, anxiously, besides, before. Did you notice there that there are also adverbs in that selection? So yes, we do start sentences off with adverbs, and we do use adverbs after the verb, but this part of the lesson is really to say to you, it's not just about your piece of writing, but it's about you looking at lots of other pieces of writing that other people have written and asking yourself, where do I find these words in those sentences if I do find these words? And that's how you should be using the ladders, having a look at the different type of words and connectives and ideas that are signalling information to the reader, and then checking to see how does that work in your reading, because that's also really good practice for your functional skills when you have to find patterns in the reading text that you're given to look at. So when we talk about reading texts, remember we use the word text to mean any piece of writing, and these are texts that we're going to get in the exam, and they are going to be taken from real life. So it's important to actually practice with newspapers and books or anything around your home that you have that is a text. When we talk about reading texts, we talk about language features, and these are the language features you should use in your own writing. So in this part of the lesson, I'm going to ask you to take a quick quiz, and I've made it quite easy for you because I'm only asking you to choose between two ideas. So let's begin. Here's a poster. It's a movie poster, a poster of the film The Mummy. Your question is, which language feature is used in this movie poster? Is it repetition, or is it alliteration? So looking at the words in that poster, which one would you choose? Yes, the answer is alliteration, because if you look right at the very left hand side of that poster, torn from the tomb to terrify the world, that actual sound of that T, which is quite a harsh consonant sound, makes the pattern of the words. So that's alliteration. That's what alliteration does, repeating the sound at the first letter of the word, of each word. Torn from the tomb to terrify. Well done if you got that right. So here we have a picture of a fox. A fox is a living creature. I believe that fox hunting is wrong. Now, one of these statements is a fact, and one of these statements is an opinion. Do you know which one is which? See if you can answer that. Well, the fact is the fox is a living creature. And the opinion, I think the beginning of that sentence gave that away there. I believe, a belief is an opinion. So well done if you got that correct. This is a picture of the weak and defenceless fox, but it's also a picture of the bright blazing sun. So when you look at those two statements, one has alliteration in it and one is emotive language. Do you know the difference? And especially at level 2 here, when you're looking at your reading, you really are going to need to look at sentences and to be able to work out, do you know what language feature is used? Let's have a look. Emotive language, because the word weak and defenceless is suggesting that the fox is a victim. And that brings with it emotion. That might be the emotion of sympathy or sadness. So we use the phrase emotive language. So alliteration, you can see that my video there has covered over the word sun and it gives you the alliteration bright, blazing. So that uses alliteration. Well done if you got emotive language and alliteration correct. So here we have a picture of two dogs, and did you know 90% of animals, and I'm not going to continue with that phrase, I'm going to ask you to decide what that is as a language feature. And did you know that although they look quite whimsical there in that picture, they might be cold, tired and hungry? So looking at those two phrases, one is an example of statistics and one is an example of triplets. Now I think you could easily find the statistics there. Yes, 90%. So if a percentage, that's giving you the language feature of statistics. So what about triplets? Well, with triplets, we sometimes call this the rule of 3. And it's when you have 3 ideas put together, and that might actually be 3 adjectives, or it might actually be 3 words that are nouns. But in this particular case, the triplets are cold, tired, hungry. Well done if you got triplets. I definitely would expect you to get statistics. So this is an important poster. Words can hurt or heal. What did yours do today? And during this time when we're all at home and we all have to stay in our homes to take care of ourselves and to protect the NHS and to make sure that other people around us are safe, this is really quite an important poster to think about. So words can hurt or heal. What did yours do today? Well, people should be more careful about the way they speak to each other. And yes, I know what it's like to all be together in the same house when you're not used to it. And it can be difficult to take that deep breath and remember to say something nice. But think about this idea, because this is very important. None of us know the actual end date when we'll be able to come back out of our homes and socialise with each other again. So it's really quite important that we think about this whilst we're at home, but also when society gets back to face and open shops. So, what do you think about those two statements? In one of the statements, there's a modal verb. And in one of the statements, there's a command on imperative verb. And yes, these are language features too. So, did you notice the modal verb? Well done. It was the word should, what people should do. Do you know that means that although we would like people to always do this, it doesn't always happen. It's what we think should happen. So, did you work out the imperative verb? Yes, it's the word think. So well done there. So if we look at some of the lists that we get when we're looking at language features, at the very least, you should know facts and opinion. You should be aware of alliteration, repetition, and rhetorical questions if you're looking at level 2 there. Emotive language, very important, statistics, and the rule of 3. So even if you're working at entry level 3, you can start looking at these language features and asking yourself, do you understand what they mean? And also, can you actually look at a sentence and pick out that language feature? So we have been revising cohesive devices because whether you write for GCSE, for functional skills or for ESOL, you do need to think about how you put your piece of writing together. And I will continue to tell you that cohesive devices are things that we need to be aware of that allow our reader to know where our writing is going, what we're writing for, how we're going to get there, and the signals are the words that we use. So now you've completed cohesion step 2. Ask yourself, did you know the areas of writing, and do you know the areas of writing that you're good at? That's excellent if you do, because it's very important when you're reading or writing or learning a language that you're aware of the areas you're good at. Do you know the areas of writing you need to improve? That's important, isn't it? But also remember, as well as knowing the areas of writing you need to improve, you do need to start practicing those areas, because do you know we often keep to the things we know we're good at and we don't always practice in areas that we think we're not as good at. So for this video, for this lesson today, I want you to think about practicing areas of writing you need to improve. And know the areas of writing you need to learn, because you might be able to answer a question about a language feature, but do you need to learn more about it? Do you need to know how would you use that language feature in your own piece of writing? And yes, practice, practice, practice. And I've seen some very good examples of your English because you practice, and I'm always proud to be part of the classroom to say hi to you, whether it's holiday time, online classroom or face-to-face. And whilst I do miss everybody face-to-face, I'm very proud of anybody who keeps going during the time that our classrooms are actually offline. So my cat Barney would like to say bye, and he's going off to his house in the garden to have a sleep. He spends a lot of his time asleep, you know. I think that's his practice, sleeping. And now's the time for me to say goodbye, and I look forward to talking to you about the third and final step of cohesion. So take care and be safe. Bye now.